to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. Today's date is April 8th. It is Election Day. I want to say not all over the country, but at least in the state of Missouri. Right, John? Pretty much it's standard across the entire state?
Yeah, municipalities are choosing their leaders today.
And also school board members and things like that. We'll get into that as we go through the show. That is the voice of John Combest. The voice is actually attached to a body which has hands and types on a keyboard for 23 plus years, a website, johncombest.com, COMBEST. And you just put a .com after it, and you go right to his website. You won't find flashy graphics or anything like that. You won't find crazy ads or anything like that. Matter of fact, it is ad-free. We never will talk about that much. And John does it for the love of everybody just finding out things that they should know. John's like a teacher, a selfless teacher. The only problem is that most teachers are millionaires, and John is a trizillionaire because of the fact that he's the stock market guru, which we need to talk about sometime this morning. So
yeah, thank you for that, Brad. I am not a guru, but I pay a little bit of attention to stuff here and there. Thank you for that intro, Brad.
We need to give you a little time to give your view on what's going on with the craziness of the stock market. But anyway.
Yeah, today is not a day to do nothing.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Anyway, we start off the show with John's top three. Now, these three are culled from the many that are on his website every day. These are the ones John thinks are the most important. And we start off with this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And we start off with this one right here.
In third place,
coming to us from the Missouri Times, an opinion piece from James Harris, lobbyist extraordinaire, longtime conservative in the state of Missouri. The headline, Brad, soda and candy ban in food stamps is long overdue. Now, Brad, I bring this story up not just because it's a really good piece from James, but also because you may have noticed that on St. Louis Public Radio's website today, there's a national story from national NPR about RFK banning sweets and other foods from federal food stamp programs. But let's bring it back here to Missouri. James points out that there's some legislation from Representative Jamie Gregg and also Senator Rick Bratton have both filed bills in the General Assembly that would prohibit the purchase of candy and soda with food stamp. So in other words, if you are getting public assistance, we are not going to encourage that by encouraging you to or by allowing you to use our taxpayer dollars to purchase candy and soda. We've talked about this once, I believe, in the last 3 months or so, Brad. But for folks who haven't heard, what's your position on this?
You know, to me, this is like a slippery slope because if you get rid of the candy and the soda, then they'll say, okay, you can't have salami because it's got too much fat in it, and you can't have this because it's got too much salt in it, and you can't have this, and pretty soon you'll be eating like tofu all day long. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. To me, I mean, here's the thing. I generally dislike the government telling us what we can and can't eat or making rules that favor one thing or another. But we are talking about public assistance here. We do know about the obesity epidemic. And also, I think James and these state legislators would agree that if you have candy and soda, grape juice isn't much better than candy and soda. And I think James would agree even that you got to start somewhere. And so to me, this is a thing of saying there's certain things you can't buy. You can't buy your cigs. You can't buy your Newports with welfare money. So why not ban soda and candy?
Can you buy Hennessy?
You can buy Hennessy, yeah. You have to prove that you are at least over 70 years of age, which is no problem for you, Brad. And also there's a little-known provision where you have to be born north of Delmar, and you have to be born east of the 270 corridor. So you're born north, Brad. You were born east of 270. Did 270 exist when you were a kid?
It did not. Matter of fact, this is a little-known fact, but 270 was renamed from the original name. It was called 244. Did you know this?
I had no idea. Are you serious?
Yeah, it was the stretch out along. What they did was the stretch. Essentially, I believe North County might have been 270, but once you got down to I think the St. Charles Rock Road area, it turned into 244. And then they redesignated it years later as 270, which completes part of the loop around the St. Louis Metro, and then 255 picks up the other part from down in South County where 55 goes. That's where it goes from 270 to 255, and then it goes 255 all the way up until it meets 270 in Madison County there in what used to be an area called Mitchell, which I know is actually, I think...
Mitchell, Illinois. I went to a baseball camp there one time.
Well, I believe I don't think Mitchell exists anymore because if I'm not mistaken, I think Edwardsville took it over because where all the distribution center is,
where all the sprawl is. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that used to be unincorporated, and Edwardsville owns that now. This part of the city.
Good for Edwardsville.
Okay.
By the way, although I dislike kind of the slippery slope element of this, and I think there have to be some bright lines of what we ban and what we allow. I do like the idea of somebody offering an amendment to come out and enforce actually law enforcement to knock ice cream sandwiches out of fat people's hands.
Listen to you. Okay, question for you. James Harris, I think he's the guy, isn't he originally from Washmo?
He is, yeah. You know James from Washmo?
Well, there's an interesting story behind this that I don't know if you've ever heard this story or not, that I believe he was the campaign manager for Dick Stratman when he ran against Brian Nieves for the Senate.
If he didn't manage the campaign, he might have been heavily involved. Yeah, for sure.
Do you know how, if I get this right, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, do you know how James Harris met Dick Stratman?
Yeah, James was at your radio station, and there's a window, and you could see people rolling stop signs, and you saw Dick Stratman roll a stop sign. Is that the story, Brad?
No. James Harris was one of Dick Stratman's students at Washington High School.
No way. That's awesome.
I think I'm about 99% sure in that. So anyway.
I didn't know that Dick Stratman was a teacher. That's great.
Well, both him and his wife were. Matter of fact, his wife taught broadcasting and journalism at Washmo. I think it was Washmo High, either one or Borgia. I believe she was at Washmo. She's another one. They're two retired school teachers, and to the point right now they are multimillionaires because they're retired school teachers. You know how that works. They complain.
I do. And James Harris's resume, I met James back in 96, 97. So I'm not resume flexing here, but I've known him for a long time. Yeah, he was a key advisor to Matt Blunt, a really important guy to Matt Blunt. He was in charge of appointments. He led the whole, kind of patronage office thing during Matt Blunt. And he's also done, Brad, what I think is fascinating, a lot of lobbying work internationally. So, and I'm not sure of all the details about it, but he's represented a number of countries internationally. And yeah, it's just amazing the practice that he's built.
Well, now you mentioned appointments. Were you talking about like the kind, if you want to go see Matt, you had to go through him? Are the appointments
No, like if you want to be the head of the director of revenue, you need to spend a little time with James.
Oh, okay. I could say something, but I won't. Okay, it's on to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
There's a rare situation going on that has to do with an industry that doesn't really want to be regulated, but some people want to regulate it, and then some people don't want it regulated. They want it outright banned. And you can see evidence of this industry all over our listening area, Brad. And that are these gray machines, the gray slot machines, the video gaming machines, whatever you want to call them. You've seen these around gas stations, haven't you, Brad?
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised that, this is this is the thing where they've got some very interesting little bypass of the law. Isn't that what it is? Like some little loophole that are using to run those things?
Yeah, well, so the company that manufactures these, we'll start with just real quickly, the major players are Torch Electronics. So mostly when we talk about these machines, we're mostly talking about machines that are that are run by Torch Electronics. So you have a couple forces going on here. The gaming industry is opposed to legalizing these type of machines and the expansion of gambling, essentially that they don't own, right? So if you're part of the gaming association, you probably don't want anybody else new entering unless they're going to spend a whole lot of money to join your club and they're going to share the profits. And then you have people that just say, why in the world do we have what appear to be gambling machines in gas stations, and we being the state, we're not collecting that money. We want some of that money. We know there's money being spent, and we want some of that money. And then you have the people that manufacture the games that say, we think it's pretty good how it is. Let's just kind of leave it how it is. So there's some bills in the legislature and a whole lot of amendments in the legislature that would attempt to put a little bit of structure around this. And the headline from Post-Dispatch reporter Kurt Erickson is, "Move by Missouri House to legalize gas station slot machines faces stiff odds in the Senate." So as I read this, Brad, we have a lot of members of the Missouri House, both Republicans and Democrats, who don't really like the idea of having these machines all over and not capturing revenue for your state government, your local government, whatever. And then we have other people like State Senate leader Sidney O'Laughlin, who says, look, we don't need any more gambling, and we don't need any more gambling in Missouri than we already have, period. So why don't we just crack down on these machines? So to me, it's a really unique triumvirate of forces here between the traditional gaming industry, between people in politics and government who say we want some of that money, and then Torch Electronics that's like, maybe we'll just whistle past the graveyard and see if we can not have anything restrict us.
Well, maybe what they should do is they should throw some money out to a bunch of community organizers and go out and get petitions and put it on the ballot as a constitutional amendment. Isn't that the way you do things in Missouri now? You want gambling, you want, marijuana, you want this, you want that, you want sports book. Hey, let's just make it a constitutional edition, and then we're in good shape, right?
Brad, you're on the right path. Now, there was no suggestion to put it in the Constitution, but State Representative Brenda Shields of St. Joseph, she offered an amendment to just put it on the ballot. Let voters say, yes, we are going to put it. We are going to allow these so-called gray machines, these games of chance or no chance, depending how you look at it, to be allowed in the state of Missouri. And the other thing is, if you're a local prosecutor, and we've seen local law enforcement actually come in and seize these machines. Maybe it was the Missouri Highway Patrol. I shouldn't speak inaccurately about that. I should check on that. But we've seen law enforcement come in and say, look, these are clearly illegal. We're going to confiscate these or we're going to shut these down.
There are times I just shake my head and I think to myself, God, how sad our society has gotten to the point where you have, I've given you the example again. Me as a young kid in high school, if someone would come up to me and said, Brad, not too far into the future in Missouri, there's going to be casinos, and there's going to be lottery tickets, and there's going to be marijuana, and there's going to be all these great sports betting. I go, not in Missouri. This is the show me state. This is too conservative. But no, it's happened, right?
And things change here and there. You never thought that a popular local eclectic radio station would be acquired by a wonderful globalist Christian group, would you, Brad?
Is that number one? Is we talking that?
No, absolutely not. I just wanted to get it out of the way so we don't have to talk about it in B Block or C Block.
I will say once again, I'm fascinated by the fact that KWMU, which is in the process of being sold, let's say that honestly, and are given away. I say it's going to be given away. Can report in depth every day about the KDHX saga with numbers and amount of money and all this kind of stuff. And yet, when you ask anybody at KWMU about their sale, which our giveaway, which is coming up, they know nothing. They're like Sergeant Schultz in.
They see nothing. They know
I
nothing.
Know nothing.
Now,
I know nothing.
Something, which is that there's a big deal happening because somebody went and checked their FICO credit score. Holy cow! That might be part of story number one.
The number one.
Well, here's the thing. K-Love doesn't actually have to go check their credit score. I was just joking about that, Brad. But FICO is in the news because it's a top story today from the Post-Dispatch's Joe Holloman. The headline, Missouri's Josh Hawley wants FICO credit score service probed for antitrust violation. Now, I think, Brad, we have an intelligent audience. You have single-handedly, starting last Monday, expanded the reach of our station by a factor of 10, according to the Hildebrand School of Math. We have 10 times more people. So I know that originally our listenership was super informed and intelligent, and I'm sure they still are. So I think everybody's familiar with FICO. You want to buy a house? Go get your FICO score. You want to just snoop around your own financial house? Check your FICO score. Josh Hawley has a problem with that because according to Hawley, FICO has raised the cost of its service by about 500% in recent years. And during the same period, FICO's stock, get ready for a populist argument, Brad, FICO's stock price has more than doubled. Can you believe corporate executives are making money? Ugh. That was my Brad Hildebrand voice. So Hawley points out something which is true, which is that FICO has essentially had a lock on this market. And his point, too, is that the government is reinforcing this because anytime you get some sort of government loan, you gotta prove your credit. You got to prove you're not just going to run out on the loan. So you got to give your FICO score. So in other words, the government is enabling this monopoly. And Hawley says enough. And he wants a probe. This will allow Hawley to beat up on FICO a little bit, to talk about, once again, the populist argument that the middle class folks are getting it stuck to them by the big wigs.
I'm no fan of this, to be honest with you, and I'm very much in the Dave Ramsey, court on this because of the fact that he claims, and I've asked friends of mine who are in the finance business, is it possible to not have a credit score? And they say it's fairly hard to do that. He claims he has no FICO score because of the fact that he does everything in cash. Now, think about this for a minute. What the whole credit thing is all about is you're like playing a game. They give you the rules of the and if you talk to anybody like you want to know guys who know FICO and the credit score inside and out, talk to an F&I guy at a car dealer, F&I financing and insurance. When you get a car and you close the deal, and then you go down the hall to the finance guy who's trying to sell you the extended warranties and stuff like that. They know this credit thing inside and out. And there was a guy that worked at Chris Offenberg who just could sit there and tell you, okay, you want to play the game, here's what you want to do. You want to have 4 credit cards. You don't want to carry more than a 20% balance on any one of those credit cards, blah, 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 blah. He went through the whole thing, and I'm thinking, it's like a game. Here's the rules. You have to do this. You have to do that. You have to have this. Matter of fact, I had a discussion last night with somebody who's about my age, younger than me, but, in my bracket. And back in the day, you know what the first thing you did was, as a youngster, when you wanted to develop your credit, you know what you did?
You went out and you bought a house?
You got a Sears credit card because the Sears...
Oh, no way.
Yes,
nice.
The Sears credit card was the easiest credit card to get. You got a Sears credit card, and typically you could get a $200, essentially balance on your credit card. And then you went to J.C. Penney, and then you got, back in the day, you got a Famous Bar card, and then you got a Stick, Spare, and Fuller card. And once you had the merchant cards, then you might be able to get a Visa or MasterCard. And John, I'm going to tell you something, and my mind's a mess. I still know my original credit card number, 467-265-009048, and somebody's going to say, well, there are not enough numbers in that. They added 3 digits to it because now it's...
Thank you for that, Brad. I just went and I paid. I got a very important text that I didn't pay a toll, so I just used that credit card number and I paid the toll. Thank you, Brad.
Did you get that from Mark Cox?
Yeah, I saw the Kansas City Star. I have a headline up today, Brad, is looking for folks who've gotten texts in Kansas and Missouri. And I thought about your friend Mark Cox.
Well, he's not the only one. Matter of fact, my sister-in-law got one. Matter of fact,
I got one yesterday, Brad. I'm talking about people that are old enough that they'll fall for it.
Well, the crazy thing about it is to the point where, either there's one of two things when you get those kind of texts. Either A, the government workers have really gotten low as far as their English skills, because there's usually grammar errors and spelling errors, and you think, okay, this is a scam. Or somebody who works at the state is really not able to converse in, or at least be able to write in plain English and spell everything, especially with the advent of spell check. Why would you have things misspelled? But anyway, that's a whole other story. Okay, John, next up, let's get the John Combest view. And you talk about things you don't want to hear me say. Can I tell you something? I am so sick and tired of hearing about tariffs. I'm to the point I'm going I'm done. I'm just so tired.
Yeah, but they're pretty important, right? They're devastating our world. We're going to start World War III because of tariffs, and everybody's going to be out on the street eating dog food.
I'm done with tariffs. And the interesting part of this is, John, you're the finance guy. Supposedly, gasoline's going down because the tariffs, this talk has driven the price of oil down. I think it's like below $60 a barrel now. They had a great employment report come out. Yesterday? Was it yesterday? Was it late last week? Excuse me. 100,000 jobs more than they expected. And supposedly inflation's gone. But nobody talks about that. It's all tariff. And, John, once again, I'm going to be insensitive. If I hear one more person complain about their 401k, I'm just going to go, I'm done. I don't even talk to me about your stupid 401k.
Yeah. So as we get into B block, let's talk on that briefly, because I think there's some positive elements, sarcasm aside, of the stock market difficulties lately. We should get into that.
Okay.